Courtney Hendrickson, the Outreach Manager for the Haven of RCS, and we're going to talk about how you can help a friend who is dealing with domestic violence and offer some tips on how to help those survivors in our community. So the first thing you need to do is to learn about domestic violence. And domestic violence is a pattern of behaviors used to establish power and control over an intimate partner, often leading to the threat and use of violence. Remember, this doesn't mean that it has to be the physical. There doesn't have to be physical violence in order for it to be domestic violence. The different types of controlling behavior can be physical or sexual, but they also can be verbal, emotional, and those can include put-downs, threats of violence, cutting off access to your finances, actually blowing up your credit so that way you have no credit left, any type of way that they can have that power and control over you. Okay, it impacts all ages. It doesn't matter if they're a young couple, older couple, it affects everyone. It also affects children, elderly, it impacts heterosexual and homosexual relationships just the same, and it affects all races. The first thing you can do when you're helping victims of domestic violence is to stand in their shoes, understand what they're going through. It's not as easy as just leaving like everyone thinks it is. Domestic violence victims feel a sense of shame, they feel anger, they feel fear. Fear is what keeps them in that relationship. So the first thing that you can do to help domestic violence victims is to stand in their shoes and understand what they're going through. It's not as easy as people think it is just to leave. Domestic violence victims feel a sense of shame. They feel anger, they feel fear, and fear is what keeps them in that place. The perpetrators rely on this fear to keep that power and control going for them. They use that fear to wear the victims down to where they have no self-esteem or feel that they should be able to leave that situation or that they deserve better than that situation. Reaching out to someone and showing them that you care is the best thing that you can do to help a domestic violence victim. The majority of victims report appreciating it when someone actually encourages or shows them that they care. If you're tempted to turn or run away by seeing a problem with domestic violence, you're just going to help increase that problem and keep them in that situation. Learning the signs is another big key step that you can help domestic violence victims. It's not as simple as looking at a checkoff list to say, oh, well, this person fits into a cookie cutter relationship or this person fits into a cookie cutter domestic violence situation. It's not that easy. Every situation is different, and learning those signs can help you find ways to help that domestic violence victim. The person often seems fearful or nervous or like they're walking on eggshells. The person is really worried about how their partner will react if they're talking to someone. They're going to be questioned who they talk to, what were you talking about, what did you say about me, what did you say about our relationship. If you see those type of signs, those are the ones that you want to really look for. They seem overly willing to have their partner call and check on them. So if they're calling their phone 15 times a day, or they're calling to check on them, who are you with, where are you at, who are you talking to, that might be a sign that they're in a domestic violence relationship. They make comments about their partner's possessiveness or the fact that they're overjealous or they have an anger issue. They're trying to test the waters to see if you see those signs in their partners as well. Because remember, domestic violence abusers are very good at manipulating the situation. They're wonderful in the community, and they're a completely different person behind closed doors. Another thing to look for is the fact that this person has no self-esteem or self-worth. They might have been this wonderful, strong, confident person at the beginning of the relationship, and now they're completely different. They don't feel that they justify having their job or being an important part of the community, all because of what their abuser is telling them. They keep to themselves. They are always isolating themselves from others because they don't want people to see what's really happening behind closed doors. They're secretive and reluctant to talk. They don't want to tell anybody their story because they're so filled with shame. They might miss important social events or things, especially when it comes to their children, because they're afraid of what the outside world might see. They don't want people to realize what type of relationship they're in. That also brings up the children. Children might be fearful about what's going on at home, or they're doing the exact opposite. They're overachievers in school because that's where they have control of their own lives. At home, they have no control at all. So when they're in school, they can be that over-excelling student. They can be the one who's involved with all the extracurricular activities because they want to be somewhere where they have control of their own lives and also a safe place because they know when they're at home it's going to be the exact opposite. Also, a thing to look for is people always want to look for the physical signs of domestic violence. Abusers know when and where to hit, where to have those physical things. They're going to be doing damage behind the clothing, behind the hairline. We often do trainings with hairdressers and massage therapists and doctors to make sure that they're looking for those signs because it's very hard to find a physical sign of domestic violence. People don't necessarily walk around with black eyes. That's what people always associate domestic violence with. It's just not that simple. When you start looking at these signs and putting them together, you want to consider the approach when you're talking to someone. You don't want to go up to them and say, well, I know you're in a domestic violence situation. This is what you need to do. That's the biggest mistake you can make. It's important not to worsen the situation for the person. You want to be that caring, supportive person, letting them know that you're there. If the situation arises to the point where there's a threat to yourself or a severe threat to the person, you know that physical altercations are going to occur or are happening, call the police. You want to get someone out there and get involved, but you don't need to put yourself in harm's way. Opportunity to talk to the victim when they're by themselves. Let them know that you're a caring, supportive person. Let them know that you're there if you ever want to talk to them. It can be a little awkward at first, but make sure that they know that you're supportive. Realize that any moves you make may be rebuffed initially. They don't want to admit the type of relationship they're in. They're afraid to talk to anyone because they're afraid that if they tell you anything, you're going to tell their abuser, or their abuser is going to find out that they talked, and then they're going to be in more trouble later. So if they say that they don't know what you're talking about, that they deny the abuse, that's a normal thing. It's their own safety and their own precautions that they're doing. Find your own way to reach out. Most important thing that you can do is understand that there's no rule book or anything that goes with domestic violence cases. As advocates, we know that we have to safety plan specifically for that person and what we call fluid safety plans, because they have to change every day, every moment of that person's life. What works on Monday isn't necessarily going to work on Friday. It's the same thing with domestic violence victims. We know that their cases are completely different. Their situation is different, and only the victim is the expert in their situation. We can offer suggestions, we can help them safety plan around their situations, but they are the ones that have to steer us in the right direction. Reaching out requires you to be prepared to do what feels right for you. You have to be in your comfort zone as well. Pointing out that you've noticed some things that have been going on. You've noticed that she's starting to withdraw. You've noticed how her behaviors have changed. That's a good way to start that conversation. And reassure them that no matter what they tell you, that's going to be kept between the two of you, and it's confidential just between the two of you. Listening is very important, and listening without judgment is even more important. Making sure that you're not offering advice or telling them what to do. You want to just listen and be there for them. That way they have that person, that sounding board to talk to. Confirming and validating the abuse, letting them know that they're not alone, letting them know that it's not their fault. That's the biggest one of all. They feel that they did something wrong, that if they had done this right, then this wouldn't have happened to them. They need to know that domestic violence is the choice of the abuser, not the victim. Being available anytime, anywhere, whatever they need. Picking up that phone when they call at 2 in the morning if they just need someone to talk to. Having a code word in place if they call and say, Billy had yellow jello today at school. You know that there's a situation, call the police. Setting up that type of thing can help your coworker, your friend, your family member, making sure that you're available for them. If there's children involved, making sure that they know that you can watch their children whenever they need it. They might need someone to watch their kids so they can go and file for an injunction for protection. Whatever you can do to offer services or help for them, it doesn't have to be financial. Letting them know that you're there is key. Another way that you can help is to learn the local resources. Most of the areas around Pinellas County have 2 different centers. In South County, we have CASA, which usually serves women and victims from Ulmerton Road south. In North County, we have the Haven of RCS. The entire state of Florida works under FCADV, which is the Florida Coalition Against Domestic Violence. If someone calls their hotline, someone will be able to direct them to their local center. So it doesn't mean that you have to be in Pinellas County to get services. You can get them wherever you are in Florida. Learn the phone numbers. Learn other services in the area that you can have them. Write those phone numbers down for your friend or family member. Be able to hand that to them. We offer palm cards where we have small little cards that survivors can use. They can keep them in their shoe, in their bra, tucked in their car, wherever they can keep it, so it has a list of safe phone numbers for them to call when they need them. Sometimes you can also hand them a brochure or pamphlet. All the local libraries will now currently in Pinellas County have the Haven of RCS pamphlets and CASA pamphlets available for you to pick up to share with your friends and family. Don't overthink of what you're going to say. Just being there and just go with what goes naturally to you. Go with your gut. Listen to what they're saying and just remind them that you're there for them. You want to make sure you reach out when it's appropriate, not when they're in the middle of fighting, not when people are having their tempers flared or when they're angry or they're crying. You want to make sure that you're talking to them when you feel it's appropriate, making sure that it's calm, quiet, so they can hear what you're saying, offering that support to them. You want to make sure that you're not telling them what to do or anything. You want to just be that nice, quiet, calm person there that's reassuring them it's not their fault and you're there to help them. One of the key things that you can expect when you're talking to someone about domestic violence is to expect that they're going to reject your services or deny that they're in a domestic violence relationship. This often occurs even in our centers when we're working with victims of domestic violence, especially if there isn't physical violence. They don't want to believe that they're in a domestic violence situation. You want to listen to them, offer support, let them know that it's not their fault. Sometimes they'll be very angry if you ask them if they have a domestic violence relationship. That's also common. They're going to try and put any steps in avoidance that they can to admitting that they're in this relationship. That's completely normal. It's a defense mechanism to help them keep themselves safe. Make sure that you're just there to listen, offer support, give them the phone numbers to the local centers, and just be there. If you say you're going to be there, follow through.